the camaraderie and the people that I come with every year.
The amount of deer we were seeing was absolutely incredible.
It makes it really unique because depending on the weather, the big bucks just come rolling through. And
You're waiting for the one. It's a waiting game, it's a numbers game, it's a patience game.
This is our 7th year. These guys are quality people, and we appreciate coming back here every year.
This has been another great year in Colorado. That's what hunting is all about. We are on our annual trip to Kremling, Colorado with Bull Basin Guides and Outfitters, Dean and Susan Billington. This is our annual mule deer hunting trip to Colorado, one of our favorite places to go every year.
Great time, giant mule deer, can't be beat. Some of the best mule deer hunting in the world right here in Colorado.
2 years ago, Mike brought me on his annual Bull Basin Outfitters trip over here to hunt big mule deer in Colorado. We had such a good time, not only chasing big bucks, but the camaraderie. 2 years ago, I got to experience it, and I got to come back this year, and it was just as good, and if not better than before.
This year I had the opportunity to help film, and that's what I've done the last 2 years, but to have a tag in my pocket as well. So that was a big draw for me to come this year. There's not many hunts that you can actually hunt mule deer in the rut. This place is amazing. There's so many big deer here. It's just an incredible place.
This is our 7th year. These guys are quality people, and we appreciate coming back here every year.
I have a problem with giant mule deer. They're my favorite animal on the planet to hunt, and I love to chase them. If I could chase them all year long, that's what I would do. The camaraderie and the people that I come with every year. My partner, Clint Capurro, him and I have been friends since we were little kids. My buddy Butch Whiting, CEO of Kryptek, who couldn't make it this year. And also I get to hunt with one of my best friends on the planet, Mr. Justin Sparks, who's also the Vice President of Operations for Kryptek. So I guess all those reasons would be why I keep coming back here. It is a special place to me and to the Prime Revolution team.
The hunting is very unique here in Colorado because you're on that 4-season mule deer tag, you're starting to get the start of the rut. The big mule deer are starting to come out of the high country. Some of the big high country here in Colorado is all the way up to 10,000 feet. And the ranch here is at 8,000, but there's a lot of country that feeds down into this valley. And so it makes it really unique because depending on the weather, the big bucks just come rolling through. And so it's kind of like Christmas morning every day when you get up here. You get to experience something new usually every day.
You're waiting for the one. It's a waiting game, it's a numbers game, it's a patience game.
This time of year, it's the 4th season hunt in Colorado, so it usually falls right in the middle of November, usually a week or so before Thanksgiving. And it's a high country mule deer hunt, without backpacking all day long. Do a lot of glassing, a lot of walking, a lot of spot and stalking, and put a mixed variety in there.
One of the things about this tag here and coming here every year, most every year we've seen big snow. This particular year, it snowed this much It just didn't happen. You need big snow to drive these muleys out of the top of the Rockies and down into these places.
So for about the last month, I've been watching the weather here in Colorado because we know that if it's cold and it snows, we're gonna have a good hunt. All the way up until about the day before we got here, it was showing that we were gonna get some good snow and some cold weather. Once we got here, the weather report wasn't matching what happened here. The very first day, it was super cold, and we drove up the mountain to kind of get to our glassing point, and we're just seeing deer all the way in.
The amount of deer we were seeing was absolutely incredible, and there was a lot of good bucks, but yeah, we'd never seen that many deer here before.
Aaron is just a great kid. It was awesome because I could see a lot of the things that he was feeling on my first trip, just the excitement. Mike and I always kind of had, this unspoken thing that we wanted to get Aaron a good deer, his biggest deer ever, because it's just a super neat experience to experience that with, someone that gets a really good buck. He passed on one buck that all three of us passed on. I knew it was just eating at him. He wasn't quite sure. It was a great mule deer.
Very old deer, and he's just big, heavy frame. If he had the fronts to match the backs, he'd be 190-inch buck.
Had really crabby fronts, so we ended up naming him Crabby, and we saw him multiple times during the trip, so we kind of got a fallback buck. As Aaron, as we saw some of the other bucks, he saw the big three, and he gets excited. He likes mule deer hunting just like Mike and I, and he's usually, the first one to get the glasses up. And we really like to take mature bucks just as they're starting to go on their downhill cycle so that they've been able to spread their genes and continue to create big mule deer.
We saw a big giant 2x3 that we saw this morning. He's got a bad limp. He's humongous, just comes in like this, wraps around, comes all the way to the top, and looks like we're probably gonna give it till tomorrow, sleep on it, and see what we wanna do tomorrow.
I know. Nothing good.
I like to see that one we saw on the last day last year right there. Big. Another year later, here we are again, bud.
Yep.
Thanks for having us.
You bet.
So normally we split it up. Two guys hunt this one ranch that I was hunting, and two guys hunt the other ranch. And this year they only had one tag for this ranch, so I told Mike to take the other two guys and go to there's three ranches we get a hunt on the other one. And I said, you take those guys and I'll just go up there.
So on the second day, we had kind of had word that there was a buck on the face of this big mountain. They called him inline because he had a small little inline, and he also had a little cheater on the outside. And we hadn't really looked for him or hadn't really seen him the first day. And so we thought, let's go over and check this other side of the mountain and see if maybe he pops up. So as we get over there, we're glassing into this bowl, and all the deer laying down. There's a couple milling around, and there's just not a ton of action. And all of a sudden, every single deer in that whole mountainside jumped up, and some of them ran 20 yards and some of them ran 100 yards. And then all of a sudden, out pops inline. As we set up the spotters and we're all getting excited and make sure he's the one, and Mike and I just kind of winked at each other, and Aaron was just like, hey, Justin, what do you think? And I said, hey, this is your buck, buddy. And his face just lit up. It was super cool, man. He was so excited. And he threw on his pack, and they had to go quite a ways to get to him because we glassed him from quite a ways away. And me and Mike sit up top, and they set up a spotter, and we set up a camera, and awesome experience to watch it unfold.
So when I initially looked through the spotter, I saw his left side, and it had 3 or 4 cheaters coming off of it. I saw he had big back forks. I'm like, man, I've never had an opportunity to chase a buck this big. And so as we were getting close to him, I just started to control my breathing and started to relax. And I just really took my time so that, I didn't rush anything, and I could kind of keep my nerves calm.
It took so long though, and it wasn't really long, probably real time, but it just seemed, because Mike and I were just watching this buck hoping he's not gonna blow out or the wind's not gonna shift, and we're just looking into this bowl and seeing this buck just chase these little bucks around and chase these does, and he's just rutting hard.
We came over the rise. He was right there, broadside. We got set up on him quick. I mean, it couldn't have went any better. It was perfect. It was almost surreal. Came up to him and he was lip curling. You know, he lip curled for like 30 seconds and it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. When I pulled the trigger on that buck, the first thought was, that's the biggest buck I've ever taken.
Biggest buck of my life. Thanks so much, man. Good job.
Finally, Aaron connects on this buck and he goes about 20 yards and piles up. And me and Mike were up there celebrating and hugging each other because Aaron just shot this giant deer and we weren't able to experience with him down there. But
That's what hunting is all about. Watching him be that excited and being able to harvest that mule deer, you know, I was just as excited as he was to watch him take it. That's what we do as hunters. We give and we take, and sometimes we let our friends shoot big bucks and we watch.
Once we got up to the buck and I was able to hold, you know, his rack in my hands, I was so excited. He's such a cool buck. The character that he had was phenomenal. He was just by far everything that I'd hoped for and more. And, you know, to top it off, he was a super mature buck. I mean, his teeth were almost gone. He was just an awesome buck to take. After I filled my tag, I was able to just help. And so I was able to, you know, get behind the binos, get behind the spotter, help Mike and Justin. And it was really fun. You know, they helped me, they gave me the opportunity to kill my buck, and I wanted to do the same.
So day 3, we wake up in the morning and it's windy. And as we're driving up there, we're starting to notice right away there's not as many deer.
The wind's blowing, we got a storm coming in. Hopefully it snows, we think it's gonna rain, which is not good. But, you know, it's hunting.
Walk out, and at the end is where that big shed's at.
Right there.
So it takes you right out down to that road in the bottom.
I'm not gonna say that I wasn't getting a little nervous, because I was. Late afternoon at day 3, into that night, it started to snow. The weather report said it was gonna clear up by 6 a.m., which for mule deer hunting, after a storm, and if it gets really cold, you know, the bucks and all the does are up feeding, trying to, you know, stay warm.
We're trying to game plan and get ready for day 4 because we know that day 4 should be a repeat of day 1. We wake up and you go outside and there's just a good skiff. I mean, it's a good 1.5 inches, 2 inches, but it's frigid cold. You're getting excited because you're like, okay, this is gonna be a good day. So as we start up the hill on day 4, it's just like a repeat of day 1. There's deer everywhere.
Finally got what we've been wishing, some snow. This is kind of maybe a little bit too little, too late. The bucks are rutting. We're just not finding the big ones right now. We've seen quite a few decent bucks, but nothing to shoot at yet.
We're headed back to the spot where in the past we've killed a couple bucks before. And the buck that we're after, this big 3x4, we saw him on day 1, he gave us a slip. Day 3 we saw him twice and he gave us a slip. Morning of day 4, we got there right before it got light, packed all our stuff up, got our packs on.
And up on the hill we see a new buck and he's heavy, but we didn't get to see him a whole lot because he's pushing a doe pretty hard and he kind of rolls over into another bull. Our ultimate goal was we were going to go after the big 3x4 for Mike. The other problem we kind of ran into is this big elk herd came in, which we've never seen elk up in this area a whole lot, and there's 200-300 head. And when you start driving in and you're starting to walk in and you bump an elk herd, everything goes away. And so we kind of been fighting that, you know, for a couple days, and this herd is right on the mouth of the big canyon. And if they drop in the canyon, everything's gone. Well, luckily they kind of cut across and went up the other side, Our guide looks down and just stops. And when he stops, when he throws his glasses up, you know you better hold still and check out what he's doing, because he's super knowledgeable, just a phenomenal guide. And we look down there, and Mike looks at me and he goes, "Did you see that?" And my glasses were already up, and I'm like, "Yeah, definite shooter." And Mike goes right to work like he always does, and he just gets together, he sets up, pull the spotter off, set up on a tripod, he gets a steady rest.
You know, I really had to talk to myself as I got set up on the tripod. Breathe, squeeze, relax, focus, pick a spot. You know, all these things that you go through as a shooter.
2.87.
Okay, we're good.
Chad, sir. Nice.
I can never ever seem to hold my composure completely together when it comes to big mule deer. I don't know what it is. They just do something to me that no other animal does. So I'd just like to thank Dean and Susan Billington from Bull Basin Guides and Outfitters. Check them out on their website, bullbasinguidesandoutfitters.com. They got a lot to offer, and they're just great people. Walking up on this buck and looking at the mass, I mean, he's a giant old warrior. I mean, he had hardly any teeth left in his bottom lip. My buddy Chad, who doesn't like to be on camera, you know, he's not just a guide. We've got to know each other over the last 6 years, and I consider him one of my best friends. Super excited and blessed that I got the opportunity to take this deer, and someday somebody else will get a chance at a deer like that because of this deer.
Our thought was to go after that big 3x4. We stop and we start glassing the hill and kind of roll over a couple little ridges and look over to the right, and here's this big heavy 4 that we saw that morning going in that we didn't get a good look at. And it didn't take long to get, you know, a spotter on him and go, "Yep, that he's a shooter." As I get set up, the way that the ground was, I'm a left-handed shooter even though I'm right-eye dominant, and I couldn't get set up. It just wasn't comfortable. And so I turn and switch to my right hand. You can see, you know, half his body up, perfect where I want to place my shot.
Did he drop right there? Smoked him. Oh my God. Dude, that's a great buck.
And I just squeeze off the round and he just drops right underneath my scope. I just start shaking a little bit because of the excitement. I always try to hold it back till after the shot.
Like down fast. I could watch him drop right in the scope. That's a good buck. Oh, man, that's a great.
The Rocky Mountain Precision in 28 Nosler dialed up the Vortex 5.5 minutes on the Vortex Razor HD, and the rest is history.
2 bucks dropped right in place with this gun. This is an amazing setup.
So normally we usually go 2 and 2 to hunt. And so we got 2 guys in one group and 2 guys in another. And this year, because of the way the tags worked out, we had 3 guys in one area and 1 in another. After, you know, my buck was down and we knew we had 3 go, it's kind of an unspoken thing between all of us is we put all the manpower into whoever's left, whether it's day 1 or day 5. And Clint hadn't been having the same success in the area that he'd been hunting, which in previous years, this area had produced a 204, 205 that Butch had shot 2 years ago, the year that I came. And they've shot some really nice, good deer over there. And Clint just said that his area wasn't producing, and he just was seeing the same deer, or, you know, if it was a different deer, it was a small deer. We went over on day 5 to help Clint and spread out and glass. So we spent a whole day glassing everywhere we could, every ridge, every willow patch, every pine, to try to find Clint a nice, mature buck.
Got a beautiful day. It's about 25 degrees, clear and cold. Looking at a lot of deer. Just haven't seen what we want yet, but we're going to give her all day and see what we can do.
We passed on a couple of bucks. Won the last day. And you're never gonna kill big bucks if you keep shooting beautiful young bucks. So I hunt this ranch every year. Hopefully I'll get a crack at one of these bucks someday when they get big.
I think there's always, as the hunter and the guy with the tag in your pocket, there's that sense of urgency and, I think you put a lot of pressure on yourself to make it happen. And when it does happen, there's a little bit of sense of relief, I guess you would say. I mean, it was kind of a mixed bag of feelings there. Like, this has been another great year in Colorado with Bull Basin, and we hunted hard, we worked hard, we killed some great bucks, but now it's over.
Had the opportunity now, once again, for the third year to come back with Mike and Clint and the guys from Cryptek. And I love these guys. I mean, they're great guys. I love being around them. Mike and Clint gave me the opportunity to come actually kill a deer for myself. So I can't be grateful enough for this opportunity that they gave me.
Costa Rica. Thanks, Butch.
So this is an annual trip that Mike said is, his, Clint's, mine, and Butch's, that we come back here as friends to hunt. And so I'm looking forward to come back here again next year. Mike already looked at the calendar and he was like, yesterday's 360 days until we come back. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to come back here to Bull Basin, hopefully see the same success we had previous years.
Another amazing year here in Colorado, and we can't wait to come back next year.